Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Tribe Dynamics Earn Summit. I'm Katie Chitricorn, Retail and Marketing Editor at Vogue Business, and I'll be moderating today's discussion on digital natives, how apparel is killing it. I'm joined today by three industry experts, and I'll take this opportunity to let our speakers introduce themselves, starting with Dale.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, my name is Dale Hicks. I am the founder and director of the Fashion Network. We are a B2B networking platform for fashion business professionals based here in the UK. We run loads of different networking forums, events, and we do a lot of business consultancy with brands, and that's me.
Great. And I'm Jeremy Lowenstein. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for MeUndies, a digitally native direct-to-consumer underwear and loungewear and sleepwear brand based out in Los Angeles, in California.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tamar, and I'm a content creator and influencer based in Jacksonville, Florida. And I also work full-time as a progressive care nurse at a research hospital.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you all here today. Today, we'll explore how digitally native brands and influencers have evolved their marketing and their products to better suit their audiences. Before we get into the heart of today's discussion, I'd like to mention that we'll be running a short Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please do send them over in the Q&A section on the Zoom interface, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. So I thought we could start by talking about, what digital channels you all have in the mix and how do you use them? Jeremy, perhaps we could start with you.
Sure. So as you would expect, being a digitally native D2C brand, we play in almost all of the paid social channels. So everything from Facebook and Instagram, Snapchat. We're starting to test with TikTok now. Which has been interesting since underwear as an industry has actually not been allowed to advertise on TikTok to date. And we do everything with Google and with their platform and their suite. So with paid search and YouTube, and then historically we've done some out of home as well as a little bit of television.
Tamar, has it been the same for you?
Yeah, generally I focus a lot on Instagram, but my blog is where all my content lives. So primarily I focus on always making sure my home website is beautiful and it's inviting. And besides Instagram, definitely taking advantage of TikTok. I am a late age millennial, so that has been very interesting joining that platform. Facebook as well. But definitely Instagram stories, engaging with people with video. That's really something that has been where I've been really focusing on, and it's been good.
And what have you seen to be working? Why do you think it's working? Like, for example, you mentioned video.
Yeah, I think, well, we're all at home, and also the algorithms changing with these platforms where they're pushing video content. So it's basically get on board or get lost in the shuffle. So I want to stay relevant, but I also want to be authentic. So I actually like talking on video. Like I like to show people the contrast between my curated feeds and my sponsored content versus me in my home, me in my life as I juggle working as a nurse. And I find that my audience can relate to that because a lot of people are just juggling different hats, and it's just more relaxed and people can really get to know you. They see you move in life, and you can only do that through video. And I think that's what's really connecting with people.
What about you, Jeremy, as someone who kind of manages the marketing for a brand? What are you seeing that seems to be working?
I agree with Tamar. I think video is really killing it, and we see we're starting to overinvest in video. I think for us though, it's about having the right content for the right channels based on where the consumer is at that point in their journey. We obviously work with influencers quite a lot, but again, for me as a marketer, it's one of my sort of pet peeves has always been that the content needs to feel authentic and genuine. I want the influencer to really like the brand, like the product, and be able to speak to it in their tone of voice, in their sort of wherever they're most comfortable talking about it. So I think that's what resonates most with consumers these days is transparency, authenticity, and sort of the genuineness with which they are talking about your brand and product.
Yes, absolutely. Dale, is that something you're seeing as well? What are you seeing, is working for brands and what isn't working so much for brands?
Well, it depends what type of brand really. Some of I was going to just mention a little bit about what channels are working for us, because I was going to say we've been doing this business for 15 years, and when I first started, we were actually sending out physical invites still.
Wow.
So gone through that, email marketing, Facebook popped up, and blah blah, and recently, from a brand point of view, not so much from a business to business point of view, we are seeing people now. Obviously, Instagram. We did a poll on our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page a few weeks ago, just saying which digital channel which social media channel do you get the most return from? And it's still very much Instagram, although there's a lot of people now not migrating. A lot of people fled into TikTok. But also, I mean, a lot of our clients as well, you can't forget the sort of bread and butter. So just understanding the whole search engine optimization aspect of things, because, the big thing about social media, which I find a lot of my clients get frustrated is that there's the customer, there's the brand, and then there's this thing in the middle, which is called the tech giant, and they're the guys that control all the algorithms. So a lot of the brands particularly here in Manchester, where I'm based, which is the fast fashion capital of the UK at the moment, and possibly the world, if you want to, look at what Boohoo is doing. I mean, they spend a lot of money on at home, and they do a lot of email marketing, anything they can do to own that customer. So although TikTok and all these new platforms are obviously hugely significant, I wouldn't forget, the bread and butter.
I think email, to your point, is actually the place where we can get the most personalized with our customers based off of their journeys within the brand and give them product recommendations and have that conversation. And we're also starting to see, obviously, text and SMS being the next next form of communication. But you almost have to take that is the rising form of communication, but you have to take that even sort of more seriously, and the way in which you treat that person's phone number, that's more valuable to them, even more so than their email address. So how do you have that conversation? Make sure it's also not just one way. How do you make it a two-way conversation?
Yes, absolutely. I also like to take the opportunity to introduce Callum, who's just joined us. Callum Watson is the sponsorship manager at Gymshark. Callum, we were just discussing, the digital platforms and channels that all, the other brands and Tamar as an influencer has in the mix. Or what is it like for you at Gymshark? Kind of like, what digital channels do you have and how do you use them? What is working for you?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, my apologies for being late. We're having technical difficulties trying to get signed on. But thanks a million for having me. For us, really, because we're a direct-to-consumer brand, everything we do is primarily through digital. So we try to utilize as many different channels as possible. I think the only channel we say, if you take digital out of consideration, the only channel we really utilize is on the ground in real life events, trying to bring the consumer close to the brand and through the influencers that we work with. But yeah, I think it's really important to have, going back to what Dale was saying, is really having a balanced mix between like the social media around influencer side of things, but also the bread and butter, which would be like the core digital channels that have been around for years to come. But I feel like each channel has its own, I suppose, purpose, and it's just really honing in on understanding what that purpose is and how you communicate and interact with your consumer, and just doubling down on that.
Can I just add to that, actually, Kate? Sorry, I mean, Callum, you just reminded me of something. Actually, there is a move now with people looking to do live events, pop-ups, and I know obviously now isn't the greatest time but there's been a lot of talk. I've just been approached by I think they used to call it an events company in the old day, but they're now called an experiential retail blah de blah de blah. So I do notice a lot of black brands that I work with are now thinking of, like what Callum was just saying, is trying to get closer to your customer. I mean, what's better than actually seeing them face to face, and I know it's not digital, but digital feeds into that,
Definitely. And like back to Callum, I think what's exciting is that Gymshark has just hit a 1.3 billion valuation. Where to from here? Yeah,
there's been a lot of talk about that as recently, and obviously it's incredible to see the brand be recognized and valued at that number. for us, really, nothing really changes. Just keep doing what we're doing, keep building this incredible community that we've managed to build, and keep going on to support and keep pushing the boundaries of supporting community, fitness, and helping people to just improve every day. So for us, nothing changes. Just keep focused and keep going. You know what I mean? We're just setting up our office over in Denver, Colorado, which is super exciting now to have people on the ground over in the US, and yeah, just keep focusing on what we're doing.
Yeah, no, really exciting. I guess in that sense, is there something that you found that doesn't work for you that you're going to stop doing?
Not necessarily that we're stopping. At the moment, what's not working for us is in real life events, obviously due to COVID and government regulations. So that was always a super exciting part of the, I suppose, our marketing strategy, because again, we got to get in front of our customers, create a lot of hype, and give a really great in real life experience. At the moment, we can't necessarily do that. So, but other than, like, I suppose what we're doing that's not working, I suppose, I mean, the one thing we try to do is just listen to our consumer and our customer, and try to act upon that. So it's just keep focusing on that.
Sure. Tamar, I'm really interested to discuss how, your role as a content creator is changing. Have you constantly engaged with your audience who are loyal and they're interested in, what you do and what you have to say? How has your content and fan base evolved over the year or the years? And, what do you think is driving these changes?
Well, I think the evolution of the influencer it's really interesting. When I started out doing this, the idea just came to me while I was working in the hospital. Like, I needed something like a creative outlet, and I was always like interested in fashion and writing, and I was snapping outfit of the days. And we're just so much more than that now. We're more than just taking cute pictures and sharing the details about it. We become this bridge between consumers and brands, and we're also ambassadors, but we're also these like little mini like celebrities, which is crazy to even think about, because I always think like my mom is the only one who reads my blog or supports me, but it's so much more. There's accountability and responsibility with the platforms that have grown as influencers, and it's more than just selfies. I personally this past year have made drastic changes in how I choose who I do sponsorships and campaigns with, especially because of the year that has happened with Black Lives Matter and Blackout Tuesday, where brands were being called out. And it was my responsibility. I have this platform. What am I going to do with it? What am I going to share with it? So I feel like over the years, my initial goal with being an influencer, with being a blogger, was to just share my personal style. That was my intention in the beginning. But now it's more about kind of like a call to action, inspiration to push the boundaries, to do things that you probably would not have done if someone that you feel relatable to wasn't doing it themselves. And I feel very inspired by the community in itself, and seeing how the role of the influencer has changed from day to day. And we do something that no commercial, no actress, no brand ambassador, celebrity brand ambassador can do. And that is really connect with these consumers, our audience, because they see us as their friends. And I think that's a really cool, interesting relationship that we can't take for granted. So that's why with every brand partnership that I do, so much goes into whether I say yes or not, because it's not just about a paycheck anymore. It's about accountability. It's about the girl coming behind me and how we're going to foster real change in not only the fashion industry, but influencer marketing in general.
Just to build on that really quickly, I think what I find interesting about the influencer world and has been really unique versus the celebrity world, which is a world I also used to work with before, is that you guys build truly authentic relationships with your followers, and you have a two-way communication. You actually can. I'd rather watch you guys engage back and forth through that community, which to me is much more valuable than someone who has 6 million followers and you're just having a bunch of likes on posts. To me, that's passive engagement. I'd rather have active engagement as a brand coming to look for an influencer to partner with. it just feels more genuine and a two-way dialogue.
And people appreciate the work and the effort. And just for that reason, Jeremy, because we could just be silent. But the thing it is social media. You have to be social. And it's something that I feel is an art, you know, to be able to talk to people, to carry conversation, to do what we do in real life on this digital platform. And I always wanted people, if they ever met me in real life, that they would see like Tamara's exactly who she is on her platforms. And it's very telling, even in the influencer world, who can't really do that. And yet some things work for them. You know, they're still very successful. But my audience, I'm very, very, very proud of what I've been able to achieve and grow authentically, and while still balancing being a nurse. And I think that's another reason why my audience and we just have this connection, is because they see me in my scrubs. They don't always see me dressed up in makeup. They see me with surgical hats and having really bad days. And that's something that people are not really glamorizing. I mean, especially now in COVID, I think that is more relatable. And I'm glad that I'm able to offer not only an escape, a virtual visual escapism with the curated content that I provide, but also the humanity, the realistic part, and like what I'm going through as a frontline worker in a pandemic. So yeah, I think the role of the influencer is changed, and I love it. I love to see the evolution of it to continue to grow and be more influential.
Yes, I think the pandemic's definitely, you know, as you say, has had an impact. I cover influencer marketing a lot for Vogue Business, and also what we're seeing is that influencers are taking a much more humanized approach. It's less glamorous, it's more aspirational, but that also resonates with, you know, the audiences and the brands that, you know, content creators work with. I guess what I wanted to ask was, what makes a brand an attractive partner for you to work with?
I feel like all of us have this innate ability to determine and discern whether someone's being authentic and genuine. And when I'm first approached via email, I can tell right away if someone, you know, took the time enough to get to know me, look at my social media platforms, look at my website, get to know me a little bit, and is a little bit personal. So first off, that's the first like initial you know, response that I have, like, have they taken the time? Do I feel like they have already invested enough time to just even get to know me as a person? Then I look at their feed. I look at, are they truly diverse and inclusive? That's something that before I really didn't give much thought about, because I was just so focused on getting that next gig, getting that big gig, whereas I wasn't concerned about whether or not if I was considered the token Black influencer being involved just to appease a demographic in their consumer base. But now I want answers. I want tangible proof that I can see, and asking and having the boldness to ask those hard questions that I feel like influencers felt like they couldn't ask. Like, who's on your creative directive board? How are you making this campaign inclusive and diverse, not only racially, but body size inclusive? Are you doing something that I can show to my audience? I want to be able to have this measurable proof. And it starts with asking those questions. And if someone is reserved about that, or they're defensive, that's just a big sign, a red flag, not to be able to work with them. But I really appreciate when brands just take the time and effort, just like anybody, you know, when you're meeting someone for the first time, when you remember their name after just meeting them and you use it right after, it makes them feel good. It reinforces like, okay, this person's listening to me, they're invested, and I want to get to know them more. So that's how I kind of look at it and approach it.
Yes, absolutely. It's like a reaffirmation that they are listening to you and paying attention. Like, Jeremy, what changes have you seen your customers over the past like half year, even in terms of, you know, what they want?
So, you know, I'll start with the product side and I'll go to the brand side. On the product side, MeUndies has was really already set up for success with COVID, with everybody working at home. Everyone is moving away from button-down shirts and sort of jeans into lounge pants and sweatshirts and sort of comfortable clothing, because now they can do that and it's acceptable. And it's something that MeUndies really thrives in. And so our business has actually done quite well. And given that we really had very limited exposure to a brick and mortar with only one store of ours in LA, our D2C business continues to thrive. So we already had that going for us. From a brand perspective, I think COVID just accelerated this hunger and appetite for, as Tamara said, humanity. This human connection. And what has made, I believe, MeUndies unique is that it already had a built-in community, and based on the way the brand was set up. Jonathan Shokrian, who's a founder and CEO, really believed in building this community around diversity for body inclusivity, ethnicity, racial diversity. It really was an all-touching and encompassing community. And we just continue to be who we are and not change who we are to fit some sort of new paradigm shift.
Yeah.
I think that's where brands are getting called out on, is now you've either adjusted yourself maybe for the long haul, which is great, but make sure if you do it in a way that feels natural to your brand. Don't try to be something that you're not. But make sure if you're going to make this conscious change, if you weren't diverse to begin with and you make that change now, that's great, but now do it in a long-term sustainable way that doesn't feel like you're taking and capitalizing on a moment. That's what's worked for us, is that it's just been part of our DNA, but it's still things as a marketer. I look at it as a brand, as something, as a living, breathing thing. We're essentially we're like a person. So we have to be able to genuinely have that conversation with our customer. Whatever we put out on social or an email, we better be prepared to respond to and have that dialogue about why we made certain choices. I think customers expect that. So I'd say customers today are demanding transparency, humanity, and just long-term relationship building. It's the human touch. And as someone who came from the beauty industry, that's where I spent 99% of my career. Beauty marketers have always been sort of this hybrid of art and science, because we have been able to tap into human emotion. So much of beauty is impulse driven and emotionally charged. It makes us sort of better storytellers, but just conversationalists with our consumers, because it's something we had to do anyways. So I think the classic CPG brands are starting to tap into the art part and the emotional part, the EQ part from beauty marketers.
Sure. Dale, I'm really interested to get your perspective. It's going to be different, not coming from an actual product and brand side. Is this something you're seeing as well? Do you feel that the customer expectations of digital brands have changed?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year for us. Obviously, what we do at the Fashion Network is obviously we're working with so many different brands, and as soon as before lockdown happened, it was a bit of denial. And when lockdown happened, I got quite a lot of phone calls from different people who'd just been laid off. Do you know any good jobs going here, this, that? And then 3 or 4 weeks after that, it was, do you know any good jersey wear suppliers? I'm desperate to get, jersey wear and trackies and all this kind of stuff. And then after about a month of panicking, it was kind of like people were just sort of, I wouldn't say back to normal, but then people were just buying product based on emotion. So then, a lot of my friends who were sales managers were brought back into the office, and sort of things are sort of kind of like, well, we still enjoy clothing. I suppose what's digital's actually made people realize is actually we don't necessarily buy clothing to go out, which is quite interesting. There's quite a lot of my clients are just like, I bought a new outfit, I bought this, I bought that top. And then I've been chatting to a few VR providers recently, and they're developing, I'd love to tell you the fact of it, I can't, but they're developing really interesting avatar technology, which is actually allowing people to indulge in that, so, I mean, it might be going in too far into the future, but indulging into that thing that people love about fashion and clothing, but actually not actually technically buying any clothing. There's actually a makeup app that's allowing people to digitally apply makeup and doing this. So a lot of that stuff's happening behind the scenes very, very quickly. And I wouldn't mind betting, even in the new year, there'll be a lot of brands will be working with sort of VR and digital technology like that. So that's my kind of like little take on it.
Yes. I think one interesting thing we're seeing digitally and on social media is that, the collective power of people online who are holding brands to account. And I'm just really curious to know, where does it go from there? How much does it impact the bottom line? Like, what experience have, had or seen of that? Can people collectively hold brands accountable on their, intentions and actions to, say, be more inclusive or be more diverse?
Right. So I'm in Manchester here in the UK, which is like the rag trade capital. It's, big, big importers. We're talking about proper rag trade here, and the UK, as you know, there's been a lot of stories in the press about, working conditions and various other sort of issues related to brands, sustainable and ethical and whatever. Now, it depends which perspective we're talking about. If we're talking about social awareness type things, are you talking about ethical? Ethical is a good one, because obviously, I don't know, you've all read in the press about, Boohoo and various other fast fashion brands, getting into hot water for certain practices of supply chain practices and stuff like that. And we ran a poll a few weeks ago about what practices would you like to see continue in terms from an ethical perspective, and everybody ticks the right boxes, saying, yeah, sustainability is important, social awareness is important, all this kind of stuff. And even we were having a conversation in the office with my assistants, and they're a different generation to me, and they're like talking about various fast fashion brands, and I think it was terrible what they've done, it's awful, this, that. And within about 5 minutes later, oh, did you see that top they've just launched that? And it's like, and I fear that's what's going to happen, is people are going to everybody wants to see better working conditions, everybody wants to see brands working more responsibly, but as soon as they see it's like, oh, it's 15% off or 20% off or 50% off, oh, I love that. And part of me thinking, God, I really hope that what's happened over this last year makes a change to the industry. But the other part of me is thinking, as soon as the deals come back in and people sort of go back to normal, it's like, well, yeah, we'll buy that 3 for 1. Doesn't matter if it's killing the environment, or the guy on the board said something wrong about his employees or whatever. So I'm a little bit torn on whether anything's really changed in that respect, if I'm being honest. I hope that's not me being too cynical, but
No, not at all. I think that's a very fair point to make. I think you read a lot about how Gen Z and millennials, they're the next important demographic, because they're going to be a huge purchasing power. But they also say that they really care a lot about sustainability, and those are the key values for them. And at the same time, you see retailers like Boohoo kind of thriving. I mean, in terms of like sales, you're kind of wondering what's going on there, who's buying it, if all these young people say they care about sustainability.
they say they care about it in one breath, and then, I mean, literally the conversation I had, was literally, we were talking about practices, and within a minute it was like, oh, have you seen them boyfriend jerseys that they're selling now? I'm like, this is the problem, really. And then we all sort of laughed and said that. I mean, a lot of the big guys like Boohoo. I mean, I know a lot of the Boohoo guys at Boohoo, and they really are acting on their feet, and they're doing a lot behind the scenes, I know, to try and make a difference. And and that's a good thing, because they're now the poster boy of sort of like, of the digital native, or the pure play retailers at the moment. So hopefully, if they can get something out there soon, the rest of the industry should follow. But I think it's a case of, let's watch this space and see what happens.
Yes. Callum, what are you seeing in terms of, the collective power of, users holding brands to account on social media? Kind of like, have you run into any cases? How have your audience been communicating their, concerns, or even just questions and opinions about the brand? How are you responding?
I feel like what we're seeing with 2020, from COVID through to the Black Lives Matter movement and just everything that's happened within 2020, I think it's actions speak a lot louder than words. I think consumers are holding brands accountable to that. They want to see action driven, and for brands to really utilize their platform to be able to drive it further. I feel like with everything that happened this year, I think it's forced a lot of people to have conversations that they were never necessarily comfortable having, and to go and educate themselves on everything that's going on. So I feel like now is the time where consumers are holding those brands that they shop with, or those brands they have an affinity with, accountable to actually going on and push further, for whether it's from a sustainability point of view, whether it is a human rights perspective, whether it's climate change, global warming. I think consumers really want to shop and align themselves with brands that are actually doing things to push things forward, and to stand by kind of their brand values.
So Tamara, from your experience, is what are you seeing consumers or your audience interested in? What do they want to learn? Like, what do they want to see right now?
They want to see.
Like, are there certain, like, I would say, values that they're really interested in? Because interestingly, at Vogue or at Condé Nast, what's changing is that it's no longer just about trends. Vogue Singapore, for example, launched today, and the editor-in-chief talks a lot about how it's about values for them. It's about sustainability and dreams and, all of this. I was wondering, yeah, what are you seeing from your end?
They want to see consistency, and not only through the consumer community, but also the influencer community. It hit me personally hard, obviously, because a lot of things were being exposed. Like I was seeing how like I was getting underpaid versus someone who had less followers than me and wasn't on the same caliber as far as like content. And I literally was depressed for like right after George Floyd and the subsequent weeks after, because it was personal, it was business, and I was working COVID. So it was all encompassing. I was just like drowning in all the social humanity issues. And how do I even approach my audience to want to see hope and see a potential future with all these brands, just all these awful things that are coming to the surface. So once I came out of that cloud and I finally had the courage and desire to want to speak on things, I came in like a bulldog, and I was just like, no more is this like passive, sweet, I want them to like me, I want them to work with me. No, you have to want to work with me, and you have to prove to us that you are someone that is deserving to be shared with my audience. And so with my influencer contemporaries, it's having these conversations that we've never had before, like talking about money, talking about like who's on the boards, like how was your experience? These were things that influencers kind of just kept to themselves, and like like especially within the Black influencer community, because there's so few options and opportunities for us. Like there's like a bunch of girls that are going for the same gigs. So now it's not about that. It's not about a paycheck anymore. It's not about who gets the gig. It's about the overall community and paying it forward, and for the up and coming influencers who want to come into this industry. And so it's also approaching these brands as like, why can't you ask these questions? Why were you so afraid before? So no longer are there days where you just agree like mindlessly working with a brand because they're such a big brand and you're so excited. I want to see who's on your creative board. What I mentioned before, like I want tangible, measurable proof that Instagram post that you posted in June is you're doing things actively about that. It's not something that was just a post to appease your community at a very intense time. And also being able to say no and walking away. And that's something that I have said that I was going to do, and my audience is going to hold me accountable for it. If I start working with a brand that is clearly not changing, nothing about them has changed, they're going to call me out on it. And I have to be ready to, to face that. And this is a business, obviously. Like I definitely want to continue doing what I'm doing and be successful, but I'm also working with brands behind the scenes. And a lot of my audience, they don't know that. They don't know about the consulting side of what I do as an influencer. And so to a consumer, it might seem like you're just throwing in the towel. You're kind of just like giving up, like you're a sellout, like here you are, like you were talking this big talk a couple of months ago, but you don't know the emails, you don't know the tears, like the literal tears, the hardship, the sleepless nights that we're going through to make change, to make real change, and not something that is just a moment. People are capitalizing, because I don't want to be that. I want to have longevity. I'm not a moment. I'm not a trend. Black people are not hot this summer. Like 2020 is our year. No, like this is our reality. We are diverse. Look at this panel. Like we're not one gender, one shape, one race, one ethnicity, and we need to reflect that. So that needs to be reflected in these creative boards, high up in executive administration, and then also with the influencers that you're working with. It just needs to trickle down. Just provide what is reality, and the reality is that the world is diverse and everyone wants to feel included.
Absolutely. And in terms of, actually reaching your audience, what are your thoughts on, virtual events? Earlier on, we were joking about Zoom fatigue. Like, do virtual events have a place in your strategy?
I'm definitely doing more IG stories, video, like I said, like things that I didn't think people wanted to see, like me just getting ready, like putting on makeup, seeing the transformation. And it's just so funny that that's like what they want to see. Like they want to see that humanity, that like non-glamorous part of my world. And so doing Q&As, like for random stuff, like I didn't think people wanted to know about my nursing side of my life, because I don't really, I can't really show too much, obviously because of HIPAA, but there are things that I can share about not only my experience as a frontline worker, as a nurse, but how do I manage it all? Like, how do I manage working as a nurse while, creating consistent quality content? Like, and that is interesting to people, like, and it's inspiring to people. Like, I can write that book, like, even though I have like 2 kids, like jumping on me all day, or I can, start that business plan. Like it's inspirational for people to see the hustle. And I think not thinking too much of beauty and perfection and just reality. And my audience, they are attracted, those posts that I think are never going to do well, do the best. It does better than when I pay like for a photographer and lighting and all this stuff. Like those posts resonate more with my audience. And so I'm trying to be less concerned about the curation and just create as is, and allow my audience to come with me for the ride.
Yes, no, that makes sense. I also feel like as, a content creator, you are an individual, so you have, a clear voice that you can speak directly to your audience with. Jeremy, I'm really interested to understand, how you approach that from a brand perspective, because a brand is not just, one individual. Like, how do you approach that? And also, what kind of demand are you seeing for, video content or digital events?
Yeah, I'd say we haven't done digital events really since COVID started. The brand prior to COVID was doing like movie nights in sort of like PJ movie nights. We've started to do some of that and talk about it. But for me, we're reevaluating what does an event mean for a sleepwear and loungewear brand? How do we get our community together? And just being on Zoom all day, is there Zoom fatigue, and will our community appreciate that? I think for us, the video is more about the storytelling around our prints, how we design our prints, who are the designers behind them, who, starting to feature some of our own community members. Where we've also seen some success is MeUndies started a few years back this concept of MeUndies Gives. It's our way of giving back to the community, and our purpose is our mission is to really sort of encourage and promote self-expression, fueled really through creativity. And we look to the marginalized communities to help them, give them a voice and give them a vote, like a boost of confidence with the product with which we make. So we partner with, we have different partnerships with mental health awareness, women's empowerment, LGBTQ, and really focusing on those communities, not just one time a year, but throughout the year, and telling their stories for them, because we know we have a large platform. So our community actually gets to have another lens into another type of community and start to build them together. So that's where we're looking and focusing our energy in the future.
How has your audience responded to that?
Really well. We have, if you follow MeUndies on any of our platforms, we have a highly engaged community, one that I'm not, usually used to seeing. They will come to the brand's defense if we've, made a mistake. And, we put it out there if we've made a mistake, and they start talking to each other. We engage right back with them. We have, amazing community managers within our social and consumer experience team who really speak on behalf of the brand, and they appreciate that it's not robotic. It's it's not a bot sitting there responding to the consumer. It is a human. We respond to every email that we get, every DM, and the consumers appreciate that. So the bigger we get just means the more staffing we do internally, because we don't want to lose that connection with our consumer.
I think that's one of the interesting shifts that I'm seeing just in terms of marketing and the way consumers interact with brands as well. I think in the past, when brands would speak to their consumers or their audiences, now you're seeing consumers doing a lot more speaking for the brands. And I think that's when you've done a really good job, because you can be sleeping and there'll be advocates out there on the internet saying good things for you instead of you having to do it yourself.
I totally agree. I think that's the sign of a brand that will have sustainability and longevity, because now your consumers are evangelizing the brand for you. That's really the new version of the marketing funnels. And once you've gotten them to convert, how do you get them to pull them back all the way down through it to become the brand spokespeople? And you don't even have to ask them. It just happens because there's a mutual trust between the brand and the consumer. And that's really important. And I think as brands grow, maintaining that relationship is critical, because we've invested in them and they've invested in us, and we can't take that for granted.
Absolutely. So I think we're almost running out of time. So to wrap things up, I thought we could go around and share, the one piece of advice, you would want to give to a young brand looking to stand out. I thought, Callum, maybe we could start with you. What is like that one, best piece of advice you would give?
For a young brand looking to stand out, I think sometimes it's just like to simplify it and not try like give some crazy answer. It's like do less better. I mean, a lot of people come with so many incredible ideas, and don't get me wrong, there will be an opportunity to do that. But sometimes I think, especially like when they're starting off and they're quite young as a company, they want to try do everything. Like stay true to your purpose and just focus on doing less better. And honestly, I think young and upcoming brands will benefit massively from that.
Dale, what are your thoughts? It'd be great to go to you next. Like, what's the one piece of advice you'd like to give to someone starting out?
Well, anyone starting out, my business partner always says the world doesn't need another lawyer, another coffee brand, or another t-shirt brand. So if you are starting out, make sure you've got something absolutely unique and different, because you will look at Callum's business. When I started off in the fashion industry, you guys weren't even thought of. The brands that are around then we're just Bench and all these other brands that are flying. So you've got to have something unique to start with. I see so many brands come in my inbox looking for investment, we're looking for this, we're looking for that, and it's just another brand. So yeah, make sure you're confident you've got that what you've got is unique and you're passionate about it. That would be my advice. And if you've got something unique, then just graft.
No, great words. Tamar?
I would say always stay rooted with service. If service is you're in the forefront of your mind with what you're doing, you want to help people, then your audience, your consumer base will always be invested and help you provide that service. I've always been like I communicate with my audience. Like, what do you want to see? What do you want from me? Like, what kind of content do you want to see? I'm basically giving them like an opportunity to kind of create this way and navigate how I'm going to create content. But it's service driven. If I continue to always think about my consumer, my audience, and what service I want to provide for them, then they're going to see that I care. And so whatever business that you're doing, whether you're an influencer, you're starting your own like brick and mortar, whatever it is, don't lose why you're starting. If it's helping people is why you're starting, that needs to be at the forefront in all of your decisions, because people are gonna really see through like someone being fake and inauthentic.
And last but not least, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm just going to build on everyone's. I think, I agree with everything that everyone has said. I think it's just know your why. Be very clear and confident in why you exist and why a consumer should want you. Because as Dale said, you can't just be the me too. There needs to be a reason to believe. And that reason to believe has to be sustainable and differentiated. Otherwise, you'll just become another knockoff, or someone will knock you off really quickly. And then what purpose have you served in the world at that point as a brand? So innovate with purpose and know your why.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, we'll now move on to some quick Q&As from the audience. Gabriella's got one here, short and sweet. What do you think about B Corps? This isn't directed at anyone in particular, so I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Jeremy, or anybody else on the panel?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been having conversations internally around B Corps. B Corps is the new cruelty-free. It's the, you know, it is another quote unquote brand that is out there. I think that it's gaining more traction and awareness than the cruelty-free logos and like the organic. I started my career at Aveda, so I'm quite familiar with what it took to become an organic brand.
Yeah.
So it's another seal. I think again, it's the B Corp logo and brand exists because of this craving for transparency in the way in which you do business. So I think it will grow quickly in awareness, and I think it's just on the brand side, it takes time to actually earn that B Corp status. So I think that I think it has a future, and something I think everyone's looking at and considering, and how do you do it, and at what point then does it hit scale, and does it still maintain its meaning?
Mm-hmm. We have another question from Patricia, who says, due to privacy issues, some Harvard Business Review have argued that the future will be more about digital campfires than big open social networks. How do you imagine that the role of the influencer will change in this new context? Tamal, I feel like you might be well placed to answer that one.
Well, I think the influencer has to be willing to be flexible to the change, because a lot of influencers have created like this magic sauce, this magic equation of how they connect with their audience. And if you're not open to change and willing to try, you're going to be left behind. And the thing is, we didn't have Instagram before. It was Facebook, and before Facebook, it was blogging, and before blogging, it was just like people talking, like sharing their likes and their fashion. So it's going to evolve. That's the one thing that we can be very sure of, that you can't just expect one thing to change. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. The influencer needs to be just as adaptable and business savvy as, a Fortune 500 company. Like, you have to be willing to see the trends ahead of the trends and kind of communicate with your own contemporaries and how can I see myself? But also being authentic to that too. Like, I am not going to be doing TikTok dances, because even though that's like really big, and I'm just not that person. So how do I use this platform that I'm not really confident in and still have an authentic voice? Do things that are authentic to me. And I'm seeing that, people are connecting to that. So I'm talking on TikTok, the thing that I like to do. So it's not just figure out how you can, approach this new concept with your authentic voice. Be willing to do that. If you're not willing to change, then you're gonna die. It's simple as that.
Yes, exactly. And the last question I'll pick is one from Aaron, asking, how do you see the potential of socially virtual relationships as more and more companies and brands catch the eye of the consumer? So I suppose Aaron is asking, kind of like, should brands have these, closer virtual relationships with consumers? Maybe that is a question for you, Callum or Dale.
Callum, go
on. So how do you see retention of socially virtual relationships? Yeah, so I think this comes back to like when Jeremy was touching on like building that community and being able to like have that human interaction with your consumer. I think if it's coming to retention, you need to build that relationship with that consumer, but also I think it comes down to understanding your consumer and listening to them. That way you can connect with them and keep building on that connection. You know what I mean? I think with anything with like retention in general, unless you put time in investing in that relationship with the consumer or with that fan or whoever it is interacting and listening to them and giving them what they want, it's going to be difficult. So I think, yeah, it's understanding the connection you make with the consumer, and just keep building on that and evolving on that. And hopefully you'll continue to retain them despite all the other brands and all the noise going on in social media.
Yeah, if I can add, I think, you know what, digital's not changed anything when it comes to that. One thing, operating a business that's all about networking, you know, people still want to network. I had a massive panic attack in March when I couldn't run any more events. Actually, we just went online. People still wanted to connect. And if anything, digital's just making the connections faster, quicker, and all that sort of stuff. Face-to-face, you're never going to change that face-to-face thing. But yeah, absolutely, I agree with totally what Callum's saying. Just keep investing in it like you would normally.
Great. Well, on that note, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you all. Thank you, Tamara, Jeremy, Dale, and Callum. It was really great to have you join us today. So thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having us.
So guys,
Thank you.
Hey, this